XRP's $27 trillion mission, the real problem they're solving. This isn't about hype. It's not about chasing candles. This is about infrastructure, real infrastructure. Because what Ripple is tackling with XRP isn't a speculative moonshot. It's the most overlooked, most broken, most expensive pain point in all of finance. Cross-border payments. Let's break it down. Right now, if a bank in Brazil wants to send money to a business in Japan, it can't just push a button. It needs to go through multiple intermediaries, rely on aging systems like SWIFT, and pre-fund accounts in foreign currencies just to make the transfer work. Every single day, over $5 trillion moves through the SWIFT network. But here's the problem. That $5T doesn't move with ease. It moves with friction, latency, settlement risk, and fees on top of fees. A transaction that should take seconds can take days. And that's just to confirm it. Final settlement? That might come 48 hours later. And the cost? For a $100 transaction, you're often paying $30 to $50 in fees. That's half the transaction value gone. Just to move money across a border. Now multiply that by the global financial system. Suddenly, you realize we're not dealing with a minor inconvenience. We're staring down a $27 trillion inefficiency. Let that number sink in. That's $27 trillion in trapped capital, locked up in Nostro and Vostro accounts across the world. Banks are forced to park money in foreign accounts just to enable transfers in case someone, someday, needs to send funds. That capital sits idle, doing nothing, dragging on balance sheets, and limiting access to liquidity. Ripple's solution? Eliminate that bottleneck completely. They're using XRP as a neutral, on-demand liquidity bridge, a real-time settlement token that doesn't require pre-funding, intermediaries, or legacy banking rails. That's not just efficient. It's a financial paradigm shift. And here's what most people still miss. This isn't a new idea. It's a mission Ripple has been building toward for a decade. It started with remittances, but that was just the test case. The endgame was always global finance. Central banks, commercial banks, global institutions. RippleNet is the messaging layer. XRP is the liquidity layer. Together, they replace the entire outdated foundation the global financial system still runs on. And don't think this is theoretical. We're already seeing deployment. Ripple's on-demand liquidity ODL corridors are live in over 40 markets. Banks and money service providers across Latin America, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and Africa are already moving real value using XRP. This isn't crypto hype. This is the groundwork for a global liquidity reset. And here's what makes this even bigger. Ripple doesn't need retail to make this work. XRP's job isn't to be a store of value. It's to solve real liquidity issues for institutions, the ones that move billions per day. Think about it. If a central bank in Africa wants to exchange currency with a partner in Europe, XRP can instantly convert those currencies without touching USD, without a middleman, and without delay. That's the kind of disruption that doesn't make headlines until it's too late. Because while the average investor is watching meme coins pump 400% off rumors, Ripple is rebuilding the foundation of international finance, quietly, methodically, and with full regulatory alignment. That's the part that should send shivers. We're talking about the backbone of modern global trade, the hidden pipes that move trillions every day. And those pipes? They're cracked, corroded, stuck in the past. Ripple is replacing them. XRP is the settlement lubricant for the new machine. And it's not just a technical solution. It's an economic unlock. Freeing $27 trillion in dormant capital means that banks, governments, and enterprises no longer have to sit on dead liquidity. That capital becomes usable, investable, movable. That's a tectonic shift in how money works. So when we talk about XRP solving a $27 trillion problem, this isn't hype, it's understatement. Because the ripple effects, no pun intended, of freeing up even 10% of that capital are staggering. Think about what happens when just one Tier 1 bank stops pre-funding accounts in 20 countries and instead uses XRP to bridge currencies in real time. Now multiply that by every bank on Earth. We're not early because we're lucky. We're early because we understand the problem XRP is solving before the rest of the world catches up. And here's the quiet part no one says out loud. When the infrastructure is fully wired, the switch doesn't flip with a press release. It flips in silence. That's why institutions are building. That's why Ripple's expanding corridors. That's why regulators are drafting tailored frameworks around this tech. Not to ban it, but to standardize it. Because when the system goes live, there's no turning back. So don't let the slow price fool you. This isn't about volatility. It's about value. This isn't just another project. It's the only crypto asset that's been engineered from day one to solve the core inefficiency of modern finance at scale. The rest of the market's looking for 100x speculation. But XRP is solving a $27 trillion problem, and the only thing left to flip now is the switch. Let's kill the myth right now. The switch flipping overnight isn't a meme. It's standard operating procedure in global finance. People joke about it like it's some retail fantasy, but that just shows how disconnected they are from how real infrastructure gets deployed. In this world, change doesn't happen with fanfare. It happens with preparation, compliance, and quiet integration until suddenly, it's on. You think Swift GPI announced their rollout with a fireworks show? No. It went live bank by bank, region by region, quietly. Then one day, everyone realized it was standard. The exact same playbook is happening right now with Ripple. You're not seeing it on CNBC. You're not hearing it in Twitter Spaces. Because the institutions moving billions per day don't advertise their strategy. They execute it. And let's get specific. Ripple's client list isn't full of crypto startups. It's real infrastructure giants. SBI Holdings, the banking behemoth of Japan, already embedded XRP into their remittance flows. Bank of America, one of the top U.S. banks, quietly confirmed their Ripple partnership after the SEC smoke started to clear. Santander, a top 20 global bank, has already tested Ripple solutions internally. And institutions like the BIS, Bank for International Settlements, and central banks across the Middle East, Asia, and Europe are piloting real CBDC and liquidity programs built on Ripple's tech stack. These aren't announcements. These are real deployments buried in PDFs and regulatory filings, not YouTube hype. Because here's the truth most retail investors miss. Institutions don't flip the switch until everything is already built. Compliance? Checked. Licensing? In place. Infrastructure? Integrated. Risk teams? Green light. Only then does the system go live all at once. They don't roll things out like a tech startup. They deploy like military operators. Strategically, silently, and instantly. That's why Ripple's on-demand liquidity, ODL corridors are already live in 40-plus markets. This isn't a beta test. This is production-level throughput, moving real value across borders. But that's still phase 1. Phase 2? That's when Tier 1 banks, the systemically important ones, the too-big-to-fail institutions, go live with XRP as a core liquidity mechanism. That's when this stops being a proof of concept and becomes the new financial default. And here's what makes it all click. ISO 20022. Ripple's tech isn't just compatible with ISO 20022. It was built around it. This global messaging standard is now mandatory for cross-border financial communication. It went live in March 2023. That wasn't a coincidence. That was the silent green light. Because ISO 20022 does more than modernize messaging. It standardizes data across banking systems worldwide. For Ripple and XRP, that means full plug-and-play interoperability with central banks, payment networks, and commercial banks everywhere. No more excuses. No more delays. Everything's aligned. So what does the switch flipping actually look like? It looks like this. One night, you go to sleep. The next morning, XRP's liquidity volume triples. Transactions between Japan and the Philippines settle in 3 seconds instead of 3 days. SBI posts record-breaking settlement volume and doesn't even mention XRP by name. A Ripple corridor opens between Europe and Africa, and you only find out when IMF reports start showing reduced remittance friction. That's the flip. Not a tweet. Not a press release. But real institutions switching from pre-funded accounts to real-time XRP-based liquidity without ever telling you it happened. And when that goes live, it's not a price pump. It's a liquidity event. a rewiring of financial flow across entire regions, a redirection of trillions in dormant capital now free to move, cheaply, instantly, globally. That's why Ripple doesn't advertise hype. They don't need to, because once the compliance teams check every box, and every corridor is stress-tested with live fiat, they flip the switch, and the game changes. But here's the kicker. You won't know it happened until the data starts screaming at you. And by then, you'll either be holding XRP or watching it disappear in price discovery while you scramble for a re-entry. This is the moment before the flood. The liquidity build-up before the release valve opens. The smart money isn't betting on if, it's preparing for when. And when that switch flips, the XRP supply won't scale fast enough to meet the demand. Round pushpin section 3. Institutional signals. Why they're loading up XRP behind the scenes. While retail panics over price action, institutions are quietly accumulating. How do we know? Look at wallet distribution. The number of wallets holding between 1 million to 10 million XRP has steadily grown, even during the lawsuit. Look at exchanges. XRP volumes on institutional-focused platforms like Bitstamp, Coinbase Prime, and SBI VC Trade have spiked. Look at strategic hires. Ripple has brought in heavyweights from the Fed, JP Morgan, Swift, and the IMF. Look at partnerships. Ripple's collaboration with the Digital Pound Foundation, Palau's stablecoin initiative, and UAE's CBDC pilot. These aren't retail plays. These are infrastructure-level alliances. They're not waiting for price pumps. They're building out utility. And here's the alpha. Once the SEC lawsuit cloud cleared, which it essentially has, that unlocked institutional floodgates. That's why Ripple is rapidly expanding into new corridors, especially in emerging markets. Why? Because the real growth is in solving structural problems, not hyping speculative ones. Regulatory green lights. The real catalyst no one's watching. Everyone focuses on ETFs and meme coins, but the real money watches regulation. And here's what's quietly changed. In July 2023, Judge Torres declared XRP not a security when sold on exchanges. In 2024, Ripple won major licensing approvals in Dubai, Singapore, and the UK. The MiCA framework in the EU now recognizes utility tokens with clear guidelines. This regulatory alignment isn't just good news. It's the requirement for institutional onboarding. Because no bank, no fund, no sovereign wealth player will touch a token that lives in legal gray zones. Ripple knew this from the start. That's why they didn't fight for hype, they fought for clarity. Now they're positioned as one of the few blockchain platforms with regulatory-ready infrastructure. And XRP becomes the compliant bridge asset. Not a meme, not a gamble, a licensed, regulated tool. The transfer starts, and most people won't notice until it's too late. Everyone's waiting for a price spike. But this isn't a hype cycle, it's a transfer of value. Here's how it happens. Step 1. Corridors expand in developing markets, already happening. Step 2. Liquidity partners onboard quietly, like MoneyGram, Tranglo, SBI, Remit. Step 3. Central banks test wholesale CBDCs using Ripple's platform, already live in Montenegro and Palau. Step 4. Global corridors converge into a unified liquidity layer. That's the moment XRP goes from bridge asset to backbone. And it won't be visible on charts until the chart explodes. This isn't about speculation anymore. It's about infrastructure flipping over in real time. And if you're not holding when the pipes are already laid, you'll be chasing green candles. Don't. The playbook was never about hype. IT was always about positioning. XRP isn't a moonshot, it's a migration. From clunky rails to real-time settlement. From trapped liquidity to dynamic flows. From speculation to utility. The $27 trillion in dormant capital isn't going to move itself. But Ripple's building the only bridge that regulators, institutions, and central banks actually trust. That's not a switch you flip with hype. That's a system you flip with integration. And by the time the retail crowd realizes what just happened, the switch will have already been flipped. Stay ahead. Be smart. Stack accordingly. Like what you're seeing. Subscribe to Be Crypto Smart for more XRP deep dives, institutional breakdowns, and crypto infrastructure insights. The next phase of the wealth transfer is starting, and you don't want to be left behind.